I should have known better. That's what I keep telling myself, over and over, as I stare at my haggard reflection in the rear-view mirror, hands shaking on the steering wheel. The signs were all there, as clear as the welcome to Pine Grove sign I'd passed on my way into town 3 days ago. But I'd ignored them, blinded by my desperation for an escape. My name is Jack Thorne. I'm 35 years old, recently divorced, and until last week I was a senior consultant for a soul-crushing corporation in Boston. Burnout doesn't begin to describe what I was feeling. More like my entire being had been fed through a wood chipper, leaving nothing but a pile of splinters where my passion and drive used to be. So when I found the listing for a secluded cabin rental in the backwoods of Maine, it seemed like the perfect remedy. A long weekend away from the relentless ping of email notifications and the suffocating pressure of deadlines. Just me, nature, and blessed silence. The cabin was everything the Airbnb listing promised. Rustic charm on the outside, modern amenities on the inside, and best of all, no neighbors for miles. Nothing but dense pine forest stretching in every direction. As I unloaded my bags from the car that first morning, breathing in the crisp autumn air, I felt a knot of tension in my chest start to loosen for the first time in months. I spent that first day exploring the property, hiking a bit in the surrounding woods, and generally reveling in the solitude. By late afternoon, I was settled into one of those kitschy porch swings, nursing a beer and watching the sun slowly sink behind the tree line. That's when I saw him for the first time. He emerged from between two towering pines about 100 yards from the cabin. Just a solitary figure in jeans and a red flannel shirt, strolling casually through the woods. Nothing alarming about that, I told myself. Probably another vacationer out for an evening walk. But something about the way he moved sent a chill down my spine. His gait was too smooth, too purposeful, like a predator stalking prey. I blinked, and he was gone. Melted back into the shadows between the trees as if he'd never been there at all. I chalked it up to an overactive imagination fueled by too much alone time and headed inside to make dinner. It wasn't until later that night, as I was dozing on the couch in front of some mindless action movie, that the unsettling feeling returned. A sharp electronic chime cut through the cabin, startling me fully awake. It took me a moment to realize it was a doorbell. I hadn't even known the place had one. Frowning, I made my way to the front door. Who the hell could be out here at this hour? I opened it to find a man standing on the porch, smiling widely. With a jolt, I recognized him as the hiker I'd seen earlier in the woods. "Evening," he said, voice oddly flat despite the grin plastered on his face. "Sorry to bother you so late. I'm afraid I've gotten myself a bit turned around out there. Been wandering for hours trying to find my way back to my own cabin. I don't suppose you could help me out?" Something was off. The hair on the back of my neck stood up as I studied him. He looked normal enough, mid-40s, slightly graying hair, average build. But his eyes, there was something wrong with his eyes. They were too dark, too empty, like looking into the depths of a well at midnight. Sure," I stammered, fighting the urge to slam the door in his face. "Let me just grab my phone. You can look up the address." I retreated inside, snatching my phone off the coffee table, but when I returned to the door, the porch was empty. The man had vanished as suddenly as he'd appeared. I peered out into the darkness, seeing nothing but my own distorted reflection in the glass of the storm door. Sleep did not come easily that night. The next morning, I tried to convince myself it had all been some kind of stress-induced hallucination. Lack of sleep and too much caffeine playing tricks on my mind. I even managed to relax a bit as I sat on the back porch with my coffee, watching the mist rise off the forest floor in the early morning light. And then I saw him again. The same man, in the same clothes, walking the exact same path through the trees. My mug slipped from suddenly numbed fingers, shattering on the wooden planks of the porch. This time the figure turned at the sound. Even at this distance, I could see that unnatural smile stretch across his face as he raised one hand in a mocking wave. I scrambled back inside, hands shaking as I fumbled for my phone. I needed to talk to someone, anyone, who could help me make sense of what was happening. I called my friend Mike back in Boston, spilling out the whole bizarre story in a frantic rush. "Jesus, Jack," Mike said when I'd finished. "That's some creepy shit. You need to get out of there, man, like now." "Yeah," I agreed, already moving to gather my things. "Yeah, I think you're right. I'll pack up and—" The electronic chime of the doorbell cut me off mid-sentence. "Oh God," I whispered. "He's back." "Jack, what's going on?" Mike's voice crackled through the phone, tinny and far away. "The doorbell," I managed. "He's at the door again." "Don't answer it," Mike said urgently. "Just grab your stuff and go." But some morbid curiosity drew me toward the door. I had to know, had to see for myself. I peered through the peephole, and my blood turned to ice in my veins. It was him all right, but this time his face was wrong. The features were twisted, elongated. That rictus grin now stretched literally from ear to ear, filled with needle-sharp teeth. And the eyes, dear God, the eyes, pitch black and gleaming with alien hunger. "Can you get your phone and search for the address?" The thing outside rasped, its voice a perfect mimicry of what it had said the night before. I stumbled backward, a scream lodged in my throat. "Jack? Jack?" Mike's tinny voice jolted me back to reality. "What's happening?" "I have to go," I choked out. "I'll call you when I'm on the road." I shoved the phone in my pocket and ran for the bedroom, throwing clothes and toiletries haphazardly into my duffel bag. All the while that insistent electronic chime echoed through the cabin. Ding dong. Ding dong. Ding dong. Heart pounding, I did one final sweep of the living room, making sure I hadn't forgotten anything vital. The chiming had stopped. Tentatively, I approached the front door and looked through the peephole again. The porch was empty. I let out a shaky breath, shouldering my bag. Okay, I could do this. Just had to make it to the car. I took one last look around the cabin that had become a nightmare and opened the door. The thing wearing a man's skin stood in the doorway, grinning at me with that impossible mouth. "Leaving so soon?" it asked in that flat, dead voice. I screamed then, a raw animal sound of pure terror. I swung my bag with all my strength, catching the creature in its misshapen head. It stumbled backward, momentarily stunned, and I seized my chance. I bolted past it, sprinting for my car. I fumbled with the keys, swearing frantically as I tried to get the door open. A glance over my shoulder showed the thing was already recovering, shambling toward me with unnatural speed. Finally, the lock clicked open and I dove inside, slamming the door shut just as gnarled fingers scrabbled at the window. I jammed the key into the ignition and the engine roared to life. Tires squealing, I threw the car into reverse and stomped on the gas. The creature clung to the hood, that nightmare grin never wavering. As I careened down the gravel driveway, it began to change. Its form rippled and stretched, skin splitting to reveal glistening black flesh underneath. I caught a glimpse of too many limbs, of writhing tentacles, of a maw filled with row upon row of razored teeth. With a final, desperate wrench of the steering wheel, I sent the car into a wild spin. The thing lost its grip and went flying, its inhuman shriek cutting off abruptly as it smashed into a tree, I didn't slow down. I drove like a man possessed, tearing out of those godforsaken woods as fast as my battered sedan could manage. It wasn't until I'd put 100 miles between me and Pine Grove that I finally allowed myself to breathe. That was 3 days ago. I've been driving ever since, too afraid to stop for more than a few hours at a time. Every time I close my eyes, I see that twisted face, that hungry grin. Every time my phone chimes with a notification, I jump out of my skin. I don't know what that thing in the woods was. Some kind of shapeshifter, a skinwalker, a demon. The specifics don't really matter. What matters is that it's still out there, and a part of me knows, with bone-deep certainty, that it's not finished with me. As I pull into yet another nondescript motel, I catch my reflection in the rearview mirror. For just a moment, I swear I see something else looking back at me, something with pitch-black eyes and far too many teeth. I should have known better. But it's too late now. The woods have marked me as their own, and sooner or later they'll come to collect.